Thanks for coming. Welcome to this first Future Film Lab of 2020, producers. It's good to see so many faces here. Just a little run through of the day. Up first, we've got a panel discussion that will take place here. Then after that, there'll be time for audience questions. We'll have a screening of our short of the month and then a 15-minute break. After that, we'll have a producing masterclass with Savannah James Bailey. And following that, networking drinks in the atrium, which is different. We usually have it in the blue room, so atrium today. Look out for me and Evelyn, who will be leading you to where you're going. Just a quick plug. We've got the Future Film Festival coming up. That's February 20 to 23. It's 4 days, networking, masterclasses, workshops, screenings. Tickets available online for that one. So I'd like to introduce our host for today, Elaine Wong.
Thank you, Fiona. Great to see so many of you here on a very early Saturday morning. So this is the Future Film Lab, a monthly session, and this month we're looking specifically at producers. And here are our faces for you, in case you don't know what we look like. Okay. I'm Elaine Wong. I work on the BFI London Film Festival in the short film programming team. Today I'll be joined by 4 producers. I have Savannah James Bailey. Savannah's short films are screened at BAFTA and Oscar qualifying festivals, on TV, DVD, and even the Tate Modern, with supporters from Film London, BBC, BFI, and Nowness. On her feature slate are Layla, written and directed by regular collaborator Amrit Al-Qadi in Development Film 4, Jack, written by James Pearson, developed by SNTN, and she's attached as a producer on White Lies for Conspire Pictures. Most recently, she was associate producer on TV series Queens of Mystery, commissioned by Acorn TV, and previously she was associate producer on Rachel Heron's debut feature, A Guide to Second Date Sex. Alethea Oppon is a short film producer. Her short film Appreciation was selected for the BFI London Film Festival last year and premiered at Oscar qualifying Pan-African Film Festival. She freelances in TV production, working on Amazon Prime, Netflix, and ITV dramas. She also leads on shorts programming for Nights Global, a London-based pop-up cinema. Next up, we have Mariana Ducey. Marianne has made short and long-form documentaries from clients including Vice, Days Digital, Guardian, and the BBC. Independently funded film Women of Colour was endorsed by Refinery 29 and shared online by some of the biggest female commentators in popular culture today, including Afua Hirsch, Elaine Welleroth, Caroline Franklin, and actress Kiersey Clemens. Her 2017 film Dark-Skinned Girls, which explored some of the prejudice that dark-skinned females face online, was Day's most viewed film of that year. Marianne's interest in social political issues play a huge part in the work that she does. Last up, we're going to be joined by Tulsi Bell. Tulsi is currently working as a director and producer assistant on a new Warner Bros. Film, which I think she could tell us which one it is. And in her spare time, she directs and produces short films and music videos. Her first job in the industry, with a little help from the BFI, was the latest Star Wars film, so that one you can name, where she learnt the ways of the Force as a set PA. Ever since then, she has been lucky enough to work on numerous high, medium, and low-budget projects, as a set PA, cast PA, and assistant to the directors and the producers. If you join me in welcoming the 4 producers to the stage. Welcome. Some very impressive credits between you guys. If I'm going to start off with the first question for today, and that would be, how did you get your start in the film industry? So Savannah, if I start with you.
I was saying earlier to these guys, I studied biochemistry at university, so it was kind of a weird, U-turn. But I'd worked as a street fundraiser between school and university, and I got a job working in the fundraising department at the National Film School, and from there just met lots of amazing kind of directors and writers who it turned out were always in the need for producers, so it was almost the easiest role to just immediately jump into because everyone wants to write and direct and nobody wants to produce. So that was sort of how I started, and then I just got completely addicted by it, and I did finish my degree, and then I decided I didn't feel like production was where I really liked being, I was much more interested in development and the sort of business side of stuff. So I went in-house at a really small production company called Starfield Productions. But I thought that going into a small company would mean you get more one-on-one time with the people at the top of it. And sort of went from there.
Did you study at film school?
No.
You did not? Okay. Next to you, Telsey.
I got my first job through the BFI, actually. I don't know if anyone in the audience is a BFI trainee at the moment. No. But it was the Star Wars film. I applied for their traineeship because they joined the Lucasfilm. And I got it. And I've kind of been working in the industry ever since because of the contacts that I made. So that's how I got it.
Okay. Great. And did you study at film school?
I studied film theory at an academic uni, so it wasn't like film school, it wasn't film production, but I studied history of film.
Film studies?
Yeah, film studies, yeah.
Great.
So I actually started off working in documentaries, like news, and actually did a broadcast journalism degree, but then pretty soon I realised that wasn't for me at all in terms of just it being quite fast-paced. But obviously with our course, it had a lot of transferable skills. Then in a way I started becoming more interested in documentaries. And then when I left uni, I got some sort of my first job in a documentary company, and then I moved to London, and then it just took off from there.
So you have a journalism background?
Yeah, journalism. Yeah.
Okay. Last up.
So interestingly, I started out in shorts programming. So my friend runs a pop-up cinema, and I was like, oh, quite interested in curating your short event night. So just started meeting filmmakers to obviously program their shorts, and just found it really interesting, like how passionate they were about making their own films, and kind of felt like I wanted to make my own. So I made my first short with a friend from secondary school who's a writer. But my most recent short was with one of the directors I actually met through programming. So yeah, I think doing something completely like not related to producing just nicely led me into it. So I had a project management background, and yeah, just kind of married the two.
Did you go to film school?
No, I did digital media at uni.
Great. And that takes me on to my next question. We've heard from kind of your bios this morning. So what is the balance between kind of freelancing, contract work, and kind of full-time work? So Savannah, if I start with you.
Well, I think I made the decision quite early that I wanted to be in-house and in development roles, particularly because you've got, sometimes you're working longer days, but usually it's a kind of 9 to 6, which left me time on the weekends and in the evenings to focus on my own slate. So at the minute I'm currently working 3 days a week in-house at a TV production company, and then have the rest of the time to focus on my own stuff.
Would you say that's typical in the industry, or the people that you meet kind of in these similar in-house development roles?
There's definitely a lot of people who do that. There's a lot of people who have other routes. I feel like all of you have got kind of a different approach, but I think everyone needs to find a balance of how to... Starting out as a producer, you just don't make any money from your own work. So everyone has to find that balance of what they do for the money jobs and what they do for their own slate.
Yeah, no, because I was going to say, just in terms of... I do a lot of sort of like freelance work, so it's a lot of sort of different TV contracts just to have that bread and butter money to then go on to start developing and making my own shorts, because it can be really difficult finding time as well between the busy contracts to sort of like develop ideas. But yeah, I have to say it's really quite tricky, not to put anyone off, but it is very, very tricky sometimes, just having to make a living, but then at the same time wanting to be creative. So it's a bit of a juggling act, but there are times when I literally take time out of TV and documentary in order to sit down and develop my ideas, and then to pitch it, because that in itself takes a while. But yeah, no, it's all good.
Yeah, I was going to say I agree. Like I feel like it's a lot of headspace, like to do your own work, but at the same time, obviously, you need like money to survive. So I guess you just got to create a balance. And maybe if at first you've got to do some jobs that are maybe like entry-level jobs in the industry. They're still good because you still get to meet people, you still get to learn from others, and then just always keep that, I guess, that drive, that knowing that there's other stuff that you want to do as well, and don't get sucked in, I guess, maybe. Maybe, doing like a lot of work for other people,
Mary, just going to what you touched on. So you said that you might take a little bit of time out from your other paid work to work on your own projects. What's the kind of timescale for that?
Wow.
So would you take, for example, 6 months out, or is it kind of 6 weeks?
Because that's the thing. It gets to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to take some time out, concentrate on my ideas, and then there's this level of anxiety, like, oh my God, I need to eat, like I need work. So I would say there's always a dry period in documentaries, so it's mainly sort of like January, February. So during those periods, that's when I'm kind of like just really hammering as many ideas as possible. But then, so I'd probably just say like 2 months or so when I'm just kind of doing my own thing, and then I'm back into the drive. I think, Reality, yeah.
So would you say that's true for all of you?
Yeah.
I think my experiences in feature films, not producing feature films, but as an assistant, and I do a similar thing to you. My contracts tend to be 6, 7, or 8 months long. And while I'm doing that, I work so closely with the producers and director that I kind of make notes on what I think is interesting, or if they do it an interesting way, I make notes, and I kind of collect like a little booklet. And then after that contract is finished, I usually have a couple of weeks before my next contract begins with another film, and that for me is kind of my period of creating things and putting the notes that I made into practice and seeing if they work for me or not. And I have the safety of knowing that I have a job coming up as well, which is, because there's a lot of anxiety that, unfortunately, a lot of anxiety that comes with filmmaking in general, but especially knowing where your next job is. If you have that safety blanket, then I feel like you can create a lot more or a lot better, because you don't have the voice at the back of your head who's saying, like, you're not going to eat a couple of weeks.
I guess
it's not that bad. But.
Yeah. I guess it's like just the life of a freelancer. And one thing that can be quite annoying, because a lot of the people in my life aren't necessarily in this industry. So my mum does this thing, bless her, where she's constantly like, oh, is it permanent? I'm like, it's never.
It's kind of a generational gap, where we feel like the permanent job is like what we need.
Exactly, that would help. But it's almost like, so in TV it's a little bit different. So rather than having 6 months, 6 months would be considered a really long contract in documentaries. But it's mainly sort of like 3 months, 4 months. So as much as I can, because it can be just so like quite hectic and full on, and you're constantly sort of like working, you don't have time to sit back and think about what's happening in society, what sort of things, subjects would be good to explore. So as much as I do sort of keep to the January, February, there are times in between as well where I'm constantly trying to come up with ideas, even on the tube. So it's like, there's no exact set period.
And do the contacts that you make when you're working on other freelance jobs, do you then pitch them your ideas, or are you sort of...
So I mainly pitch for online, short form. Trying to pitch for sort of like TV and documentaries, there's so much red tape, and it just developing ideas of that sort of longitude, because obviously it's like hourly documentaries or 30 minutes. So in order for me to get that release from making my own, sort of being creative, that's where I mainly do the short form stuff. So a lot of the stuff that I do, I don't pitch it to TV. And I also think the online world just have a different kind of approach. I think TV is just a little bit behind. So I'd rather sort of just like go online.
So you mentioned kind of contacts that you come up with, in your paid jobs. How important are these people, in terms of your networks? They might become collaborators, collaborators, but also maybe mentors. I know, Savannah, for you, for example, you're on the BFI Flair mentor scheme. Like, has that helped you in your career?
Yeah, it has, definitely. I mean, the Flair mentorship does everyone know what BFI Flair is? It's the kind of LGBT film festival that BFI runs in
Every year.
End of March. And each year they take 6 writer, directors and producers, and you have sort of 2 weeks of these amazing like labs and one-on-one sessions with filmmakers whose films are playing at the festival. And then at the end of it, they set you up with a mentor for the year ahead. And I was paired with Mike Goodridge, who at the time was the head of a very prestigious sales company, Protagonist Pictures. He quickly left that, actually, when we got paired. So he, about 2 months in, moved and headed up a film festival in Macau. Definitely having those mentorships, I think, are really helpful. And Mike was amazing. Mainly when I had a specific problem, he was kind of always on the end of a phone. And often it's just, as well, to run stuff by people who you respect and whose opinions you respect. And sometimes they go, yeah, no, you've got it right, you'll do what you plan to do. But just having that, like having someone help you have the confidence in your own decisions and your own strategy. So yeah, I'm all for mentorship. I think it's brilliant. But I think also I've got lots of mentors who I've just found myself and who maybe aren't kind of so official, but who quite often I'd reach out. If I saw a producer who consistently made work I liked, I'd reach out and say, can I buy you a coffee and ask you some questions? And flattery gets you a long way. People like hearing that you like their work, so generally people were quite open to it.
And how do you reach out?
Email, usually.
Usually, and most of them are responsive.
Yeah. I did once write a letter. Oh my God, what's her name? Elizabeth Carlson, who's an amazing producer. And I saw her do a talk somewhere, and I just was sort of quite obsessed by her. I thought she was absolutely amazing. So I thought if I wrote her a letter, like a handwritten, posted letter.
Not even typed, it was
No, I was like, she'll really feel that I've gone to a lot of effort. And I got a very nice response, so probably could have emailed, but...
What about the rest of you? Have you had mentors in the past? Do you think it's important to have a mentor?
I've definitely got unofficial mentors. But yeah, it is super important because I think sometimes when you make a film, you just, once it's done, you're just so excited to show everyone, showing your friends, and everyone's obviously like, yeah, it's great. But then at the same time, you do need that person who has that experience, who can give you constructive feedback, because there's always something to improve on. So if you're just surrounded by everyone who's like, yeah, it's really good, or your mum, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like, it's really important to have those people who can, even like throughout the edit and stuff, who can just offer a bit of advice. Yeah, but I would definitely say I've got unofficial mentors who I meet up with from time to time, or if I've got any questions about anything, I can just ask them. But yeah.
And how do you meet them?
Again, it's just emails,
And
I can get a bit like, hey, it's me again. But yeah, it's mainly just emails, but also going to events. And if I'm hearing someone who I'm really inspired by, I'll sort of use it as a reference point to get in contact with them.
I think all of my, again, unofficial mentors, I made through the jobs that the films that I've worked on. Either I was in their department and they kind of took me under their wing, or because I started out as a runner in the AD department, and I don't want to be an AD, so I started talking to a lot of the producers' assistants and the producers, and I kind of kept in contact with them after the film had ended, and that's kind of how I kept those mentors as well. And I go to them with my ideas and my scripts, and they read them and then give constructive criticism, and they also promote, which is really great, they promote that short film or whatever around their company, and they show it to other people, so they're really great spokespeople for your own personal projects as well.
Great. So that brings us very well onto collaborators. So you say you can keep in touch with people that you worked on these feature films, and they share they watch your short films and they can share them. How do you meet your collaborators?
Social media.
Social media.
Not for me, yeah. Because I'm not really like a social media person, but I do make it a point to, even when it comes to finding people for the films that I make, I do a lot of that through social media. But yeah, there are a couple of filmmakers who really, really love their stuff, and yeah, I'll sort of just try and somehow form a kind of back and forth. But yeah, it's been quite successful. I would say, yeah, do a lot of that.
So it's all kind of you always reaching out to people.
Yeah.
Typical producer.
Yeah.
Alethea?
Yeah, I would say same. I feel like social media is definitely powerful in terms of because people are very happy to like show their work. So it's good for you to identify, oh, like this connects with me, and then obviously you can like reach out to them. I would say it's definitely maybe like friends of friends or people you've worked with before. So for me, obviously, like my shorts programming did allow me to meet a lot of filmmakers. So yeah, that's kind of grown like a network in film, whereas probably I just like knew like, friends from school who just do like a range of different things. Yeah, so I'd say definitely kind of, even if it's voluntary work or like wherever you are, you'll just grow a network and you'll meet people through that, and people will like recommend you, and that's always nice as well.
I think I find people on my film set, so I always approach the camera assistants or the second ACs or the grip trainee and say, hey, I'm making this film in a couple of weeks and I need a grip. Do you want to come aboard? And usually they're more than happy to do it for free, may I add, because they want to build up their own portfolio like I want to. And I always find it really hard to find people on social media because I trust people who I meet rather than through.
So it's mainly from looking at, because a lot of the time, especially when it comes to filmmaking and stuff, people wanting to share their content. So already you've got a reference there of what they can do.
Yeah, exactly.
So for me, it's more of a case, I wouldn't just necessarily, there's obviously a conversation that takes place and what is it that you did on that production, and seeing if they can bring those same skills to the set. So yeah, it seems to work up to now. Touch wood, but yeah.
I've got a very, very long Excel spreadsheet of talent that I'm tracking, and maybe like 160 writers and directors on it. I had a meeting with another production company yesterday, and they said they had a similar thing, but they had 470 names, and they'd had like a team meeting where everyone came together to work through the list and to, say update what people have been doing, and everyone feed in on their opinions of their work, and they got about 14 names in and went, yeah, maybe this strategy is not going to work for the whole. But I think it's such a crucial part of the job, and I think just keeping an eye out all the time, and even if you're not looking for collaborators at that point, just reaching out to people and sort of starting a dialogue and then trying to maintain some contact with them and keep up to date with what they're doing.
Yeah, I think this is kind of true for myself as well. Working in film programming, if we do tracking. So I've seen a lot of your films. Like I said, and it is a case of we all would need to know what filmmakers are making. And it is kind of this thing of spreadsheets. It comes down to.
It's very creative.
I know. Going back to what you say about with tracking and directors, like, if you look up to, you've also worked with, say, Emery, for example, for kind of consistently. Do you find that you are working with the same collaborators over and over?
I have done quite a lot, actually. I've done sort of multiple shorts with lots of directors. I think Amory and we actually met on the Flair mentorship, or we'd maybe met once before, but that was where we kind of solidified our friendship. And I think having 2 weeks in a room with someone where you're just talking about film, we quite quickly realised that we had exactly the same sort of vision for what sort of stuff we wanted to make. And luckily that relationship's just been great. And we've made 4 shorts together. I think you're going to see Anemone, which is the latest one we did. And that's now a relationship that's moved into features. So we've got the script in development with Film 4. So yeah, I think particularly producing shorts, you've got to really, before you set out to do it, you really should know what you're getting out of it, because it's a really painstakingly hard job. And, you know, you obviously want some reward at the end. So that could be that you just want to practice your production experience, or that you want to get into festivals, or it could be that you're building a relationship with the talent you rate and you're trying to convert that into a feature, you know, something that can last longer and grow and grow. And with Amory, that was definitely always the kind of goal. We knew that was, if we liked working together, that was where we wanted to aim for.
Would you guys say it's true that you work with this kind of, you know, you do find yourself working with the same collaborators?
I would say on my shorts I do, but then long form documentary, because obviously that's TV, there's so many different people. Obviously I have gone back to work with the same director once or twice, but a lot of the time it's just a range of different directors, all the time. So yeah, it's quite varied.
No, yeah, I would agree. So I've only produced 2 shorts and doing my third, and all 3 have been like with different directors. I think you do kind of find your person, or like people, like your brains just align in terms of what you want to create and the kind of stories you want to tell. And I would say, yeah, I probably can see myself working with the directors I've worked with, again, in different capacities. Yeah, I think maybe, I don't know, I guess maybe don't feel like pressure to find these collaborators. I think it is supposed to be a natural process, so when it happens, and obviously where you can, yeah, just try and make like content that you know you want to watch, I guess, and then, yeah.
Because I can't help but think, actually, but as long as you're finding somebody who's just as passionate about that subject as you are, because especially with this industry, it's good. Sometimes it can get a bit, you know, especially if the same people getting the same jobs, it's not very fair to keep it all contained, and you do need those different voices. So it's always good to try and, well, I would say, just work with as many different people as possible, because there's different things that you can get, from different experiences.
I think you have to be you're very lucky if you find someone who's on the same wavelength as you are. I'm not as experienced as these guys in terms of my own projects, but the films that I have made, I've made with different people each time. But there are a couple of people in different departments, like script supervising or in sound, who I liked working with and who I know I will work with again, because we're on the same wavelength, we understand each other, like we can read each other's minds sometimes as well, and that's really important when, because I also direct my films, and sometimes the words don't come out of your mouth, even that didn't make any sense. When you don't have the words to express yourself properly, if you have a team or a crew who know what you're saying, then it just makes it so much easier. But you can only get to that point if you work with different people, and if you're brave enough to work with different people, then you'll get a lot out of it, I think.
I think actually saying about like heads of department, because on Amru and my shorts, we've worked with the same editor, production designer. Yeah, same editor and production designer on all 4, and the same DOP on 3. And I think what's been lovely about that is we're basically testing that relationship and building that relationship so that hopefully we can all work on the feature together. And you've got a really good shorthand, and everyone trusts each other's taste and decision making and stuff.
It's also, all of you have kind of worked on different formats, short form for online, short form kind of festivals, like TV's long form. Again, how do you find working between all these different formats? How do you have to adjust your skill set every time?
Because I guess we were talking about this just before. When you say you're a producer, there's so many different types of producing. So after my main background is documentaries, but then once I'd started getting experience working online, I realised that, and some of you might think this sounds ridiculous that I didn't know this, but it's almost like you're having to work a lot with money and budgets and logistics, and that's not the case in TV. So I felt as though when I started doing more online stuff, I had started learning so like new skills, like new things I needed to develop. And to be honest, I think I quite like the fact of going from different formats, because I just like keeping things different. I don't like doing the same thing, and I think that's just the whole point of this industry as well. It's like you don't want to be sort of stuck doing the same thing all the time. But yeah, I quite like it. I enjoy it.
You like the challenge?
Yeah, exactly.
I think even in feature film alone, there are different kinds of producers. Like the film that I'm on at the moment, there are about 1 million different producers. There's like 5 executive producers or whatever. But from what I've observed, there's a creative producer who's kind of the director's right-hand man, where they're the point of contact, the point of call if the director has, if they're stuck with a creative decision, they go to the producer, because the producer knows as much about the story as the director does, because they've been there since the beginning, and they're there to support the director and make decisions on behalf of them. And then there's also an executive producer who is the kind of liaison between the studio and the director, and then there's like a logistical producer who's in charge of the budget and the and the money and keeping everyone happy. So even in feature film alone, there's so many different kinds of producing. You're sport for choice.
And usually in shorts, you're doing all of it.
Yeah.
So you'll be like line producer, the exec, the production manager. You're doing like every single role that the whole production department is just one person.
Not just that, but also sometimes costume and makeup and yeah, because you want to save money, so you do take on multiple roles.
End up being like the locations manager.
Yeah, all of that.
Fun times.
The driver.
Definitely when it comes to scripted, my experience has been that once you're actually into production, it's exactly the same. It's just longer, but it's the difference really between shorts and features or shorts and TV is the money and the sort of business element. No one's making shorts as a business proposition, so it's all kind of just a solely creative endeavour. And as soon as you get into financing, features and TV, you're suddenly, the element that you don't encounter in shorts is all of the legals, the kind of financing paperwork, closing the deals, and there's not really any way to prepare yourself for that other than to just do it and hope for the best.
I think that takes us on very well to funding. How do you find the financing for your films?
It's a struggle.
I think there's different there's different ways. There's loads of different avenues. There's the classic crowd. It depends if it's a short film. It's easy, and especially if it's a documentary, it's a lot easier to crowdfund. Rich friends, rich family members. There's also competitions like the BFI have a short film fund, as do a lot of different companies. You can finance it yourself, like the film that I just shot. It was partly crowdfunded, partly from my own pocket. So many different films.
I really think it also just depends on what type of content. Because say, for example, TV and stuff, you're dealing with broadcasters and commissioning, so it's a bit different. The pressure isn't on you as a producer to get that. That's on the company. But in relation to, say, Vice or Days or more of the short-form platforms, it's all about trying to get those commissions, and sometimes that is a case of just researching and then finding out who the commissioners are. And a lot of the time these platforms have a projected sort of agenda for the year, for the different, the quarterly basically. And it's just emailing people and saying, what ideas are you interested in at the moment? So that then you can pitch ideas according to their agenda, so you're not just blind pitching left, right and centre. So that's a way I do it for those particular platforms. Yeah.
And what about your own work?
That's exactly what I've done for my own work, basically. But this year I am starting to try and get more into applying for funding online. God, it's just, it's just like the sort of applications that a lot of people are doing, like BFI. It sounds like we're doing like a promo for BFI. But yeah, just having to research and do all the different types of application processes.
I think what's good with doing those applications, I remember when I was kind of first starting out in shorts, I'd do so many of them and I'd like never get any money from any of them. But it does teach you how to, firstly, it teaches you a lot about your project because you're actually being interrogated quite hard on it, even to submit for money. But also you get better at doing them. And suddenly over the years, it went from maybe 1 in 10 things I put in for money I'd get to now like maybe 6 or 7 out of 10. So it's clearly, you just practice basically, isn't it? But there definitely are sources of finance out there for shorts, and I think it is growing as well because the short form world is kind of booming. Like people are, Quibi, has anyone heard about Quibi, this new short form platform that's about to launch in the UK, which is kind of like a Netflix subscription service but just for shorts. So clearly people are realising that actually not everyone's watching stuff now in the cinemas, people are watching at home, but also on the commutes, which you might want to watch something that's 15 minutes rather than... so yeah, I think it is often a question of just researching a lot and knowing what's out there and kind of constantly updating your research, and there are avenues, but yeah, it's not always guaranteed.
I think also keeping in contact with people, tying back to the networking contacts question, you have to keep in contact with people because you might have an idea one day that you think would be marketable, and if you have strong connections to a film studio or a TV studio or another filmmaker or producer with money, they're more likely to listen to your pitch rather than if you couldn't be bothered to keep in contact with them, so that's another way to do it, I guess.
And I do think as well, I'm doing more of this type of research, but it's kind of, there are certain funding opportunities that come with certain content. So for example, it's like if you are pitching a particular idea and a particular content, there will be funding out there for that particular subject area.
Yeah.
So I think, so it's basically just keeping that in mind, that if you have a particular idea, that try and hone it into those certain places that are likely to give you funding, as opposed to just doing the general ones.
I was just going to add, probably not to let the lack of finance scare you. I think sometimes you can have some budget and just work within your means, budget within your means. You might have a really grand script. You can either alter that script or maybe shoot something else first, if you just want to get out and make something. Utilise your network, because you never know, you might know some people who are talented in certain areas who might be happy to help you out for a day. So I guess what you can. Yeah.
Be frugal. Yeah, because the film that I just made, we did it on a budget of around £1,400, and it was like an 8-minute long thing, and I worked with this DOP a couple of years ago, and I kept in contact with him, and he's now a professional DP working in commercials, and he's got all of his own equipment. He's got I think an ARRI camera, he's got loads of lights and everything. So the budget, we managed to create a really beautiful film on such a really tight budget, because we utilised our networks. So that's a really useful skill to have, I think, as a producer.
Yeah, I actually totally forgot about that. So with one of my films, Women of Colour, obviously everyone who's involved, again, I'd worked with them before, and they were just invested in the idea, so understood that I didn't have the budget, but they too are at that stage where they're wanting to develop and improve themselves. But even the location itself normally would have cost so much, but again, they had, through word of mouth and people who are new, they gave certain allowances to people who were completely on their own. So there is ways of actually just still making the film with no money, but it's just having to accept that you're not always going to make money from it at the beginning anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just genuinely being passionate about it at first.
I think that leads me on to my last set of questions, and that is, where do you see yourself as a producer in the future? Is it features you're interested? Is ultimately interested, or do you want to is it the short form and kind of digital platforms you want to aim for?
I was going to say, interestingly, I really want to get into documentary filmmaking. Like, that's probably, but I think kind of makes sense because the shorts I've done all kind of have semi-serious topics. So, like, my first short was about human trafficking. My second one basically focused on a mum whose son had died as a result of gun crime, and then the one I'm doing now is almost around like sexual harassment. So yeah, I think obviously it's nice to be able to entertain people and for people to be able to resonate with a story, but I think if it's something that has like a bigger purpose, that's always more interesting to me. Yeah.
I guess it doesn't feel as demanding when you're putting in so much work into something like you want it to, I guess it might sound a bit cliche, but make a difference to some extent. I would probably say that I would like to direct more shorts and possibly do long form, but that's if I'm really passionate about it, because the amount of jobs I've done just for money, it's been like, oh my god. Do you know, like in terms of just having to put so much effort into it. So in terms of long form, if it's really important, I'm really passionate, then I'd be happy to do that. But ideally, I would like to do more short form.
I mean, I'd like to direct feature films, but from the shorts that I've made, I've kind of directed and produced them all because I feel like I have more control over the story, and also I feel like I'm probably the most passionate about my story of the whole crew, so you kind of have to be the driving force behind it as well as being taking charge of the creative role. But I'd like to go into feature films.
Great. And Spanner?
Yeah, features and TV. I think being able to do both. And I'm not like writing off shorts forever. I probably will end up doing more because I can't seem to say no. But I think what's really nice about how the industry is evolving is that there is now more flexibility between what format you work in. And definitely there used to be this real bias against TV, so film companies wouldn't touch it. And now all of the big film companies are getting into TV because it's where the money is. But having the flexibility to have someone pitch you a story and you go, well, I love that story, but it's not a feature film, that's a TV idea, or actually it's not enough of a substantial idea to be a feature, like let's do it as a short. I think having that fluidity between the different mediums is quite nice.
We have time for audience questions now. So we've got a roving mic, so if you just put your hands up if you'd like to ask a question. Yeah, we've got one at the back there. Yeah, just at the back. Keep your hand up, yeah.
I'd hate to be the right person.
Hi. Thank you for today. It's been really, really good. I think my question is mostly directed to Marion. I currently work in like unscripted TV development, but I'm also kind of feeling a bit like it's not really what I want to do. I kind of want to go more into scripted stuff. How did you make that jump between the two? Because I kind of feel like now it's like I'm in the unscripted, like non-scripted fact tent world, and it's like, how do I move? Because I've been doing that for 2 years.
Yeah, it can be difficult sort of making the transition, but so are you talking more about how I'm doing both documentary and online stuff? Yeah. So with the online stuff, I just did that outside of TV. So I was kind of like doing 2 jobs at the same time, and just having to sort of create the opportunity for myself as opposed to relying on TV, because it's the same thing as you were saying. It's like I think it's changing now, but back when I was starting, it was very much, there was a snobbery even towards online, people who worked in the online world. So whatever I did online, it didn't really help me much on the TV side of things. So it's just having to, I guess, just having to pursue, did you say the scripted stuff? Or the...
Scripted or just like short form, I think, as well, just like a different
no, I agree. So I think if anything, it's just doing your own stuff outside of TV and then just working up your experience that way, so that then when you want to apply for the opportunities that you want, you've at least got that experience. And it's actually a bit more impressive as well when you sort of gone out of your way to do it yourself. But yeah, that's what I would advise.
I think we're all very thankful that online platforms are now, had them, people see the importance.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Any more questions? Yeah, I've got a question over there.
Hello. I was interested in, when you're making your shorts, how do you guys find your actors? Do you kind of run a casting process, or do you go to ones that you're familiar with, or you're not really involved in that side of it?
There are loads of casting websites, like Casting Call Pro, or Mandy now I think it's called, and they have loads of really good experienced actors actually who are willing to do pretty much anything to add to their portfolio. I also I was a part of this kind of acting troupe, not because I was interested in acting, but because I wanted to meet actors. And so that they kind of mainly worked in theatre, and they wanted to get a lot of experience in front of the camera. So if you're interested in doing that, find a local kind of acting or theatre company and approach the actors there, because they're always willing to do projects for the camera.
Yeah, I was going to say, because randomly I feel like if you try and go to like short film or like screening events where there's Q&A, sometimes there's actors present, and you might come across an actor that you're like, oh, that was a really good actor, really liked how they portrayed this role, and then like go and talk to them. So I do think networking events is a good way to meet cast. Again, strangely, social media.
Yeah,
I guess it depends. It depends on the age, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think social media is a good place. Networking's a good way to meet actors.
Because even
No, go on.
I was going to say, like, even on Facebook groups, like, there are a lot of these, like, groups where people are showing the show reels, and I pretty much just do everything on social media, especially if you don't really have much of a budget, because I guess a lot of these agencies will probably want some money. So, social media all the way, all the time.
One thing that's we were talking earlier about tracking talent, but I think that one thing I've done that's actually worked quite well was on, even as like early as my first short, when we did auditions for people, there were a couple of people who were amazing, but just were completely unsuited for the role. So I always would make a note of them, and then quite often I've been working on another project and I thought, actually, that person who was brilliant in that audition. And actors love that because they feel like you've taken notice of them. They get so many rejections all the time that to actually have someone come back and say, no, I did genuinely think you were good, you just weren't right for that role. And I have worked with casting directors as well quite a lot, and often, particularly if you look at casting directors who maybe work more in kind of the commercial world and are looking to move into film or TV, they're often quite up for helping out for free or very little. And again, that sort of just builds your pool, and then you can track talent that way.
I'm thinking I probably just need to clarify, though, is a lot of the content I make and the people who I'm finding, it's more to do with factual content as opposed to, like, people who are performing. So I'd say the work that I've done where it's mainly performance, I wouldn't say performance, but it didn't really require anyone to give their true story or whatnot. It's like dark-skinned girls, but that was social media. But I would say with acting and stuff, I'm sure it's obviously a bit different because I'm mainly factual as opposed to.
How would you, if you were making a documentary that had a lot of like sensitive content, how would you approach someone with a kind of a dark story or a dark past without,
So I would say, with really sensitive stories, it's very much, it's doing a whole load of research. So this is even just producing, I guess, in documentary. It's researching newspaper articles. It's just trying to find people who have the particular stories that you're looking for, and then the different ways in which you can try and get hold of them. So it wouldn't just be a case of me randomly just contacting people and being like, you know, I would already kind of have an idea that they have that particular issue, but I guess with really sensitive stories, you would go through organisations and, you know, I guess it really just depends on the subject matter. Yeah, just general casting in TV is very, very online because you can reach so many different people. Rather than street casting, you just reach so many more different people. Did I answer that right?
Yeah, you did, yeah.
It's just like a waffle a little bit.
Yeah. And any other questions in the audience? Yeah. Yep, got a hand. We'll go, yeah, so just here.
Hey guys, my name's Anton. So this is not really a fully formed question yet. I'm literally thinking about it as I'm talking to you. So basically technology is kind of ramping up and speeding up, and we can see that, you know, through Netflix kind of changing the way media is being distributed and social media. Literally, I think I saw someone watching Dunkirk on a little mobile phone while probably like, yeah, Christopher Nolan would hate that. But it's just we're all in a form of visual storytelling, whether it's documentaries or TV or film. And you guys being on the inside, you get access to like the best directors, or like, you basically get the inside. Like, where is this all going? Is it virtual reality? Is it immersive environments? I just need some little ideas to
Cinema's
digest.
doing quite well, actually. Thank God. I think that people are definitely diversifying how they watch, but cinema audiences are sort of staying pretty solid. I think that there are definitely like unknown waters ahead that we'll have to kind of charter and try and find a way through it, and it will undoubtedly change quite a lot. I think particularly as VR, there's been a lot of money put into actual storytelling within VR because it's quite difficult. Obviously with film, every edit point you're basically telling the audience to look at something else, and if you're in a 360 world, there's no way to like guide you through a narrative. There's been a lot of money poured into it, so I think that will have quite a big effect. And like you say, people are watching in lots of different ways, but I think people are consuming more content than ever. I think as long as good stuff's being made, people will seek it out in whatever place that it's available to them, hopefully.
Because I'd say like TV documentary, that's probably, say factual entertainment, you're getting a lot more funding for it, whereas TV documentary not so much. But obviously then when you're looking at Netflix and Amazon and like those online platforms, they are doing really well with it. So I guess obviously everything's just moving online, but I think in terms of the different genres, I haven't necessarily heard in terms of anything, not necessarily. Can't finish my sentence. But anyway, yeah.
I don't feel like someone. I think it is sort of safe because I don't feel like someone playing a virtual reality game is going to stop them going to the cinema. It's such a different experience. I think we'll just the amount of kind of screen time people have will keep rising, but hopefully they'll just be using lots of different, pulling stuff from different places and still going to the cinema. I like the cinema.
Yeah, I like to think people still actually. Yeah. I mean, as a film programme, I always hope that people want to go to cinemas such as this and see things on a big screen. But I think like what you were saying, like actually these different mediums and kind of platforms are very interesting. I mean, even going just to the short films in particular. When I see so many films are kind of different, like the 4x3, which is something that you step back in time. Everyone's making films on 4x3, and now people like to use that as a kind of a vintage format, which is
well, like everyone thought that 3D was gonna. Well, when televisions started, everyone thought cinema was going to die, and then when 3D came out, everyone thought no one would watch anything else. So yeah, I think cinema's going to be all right for a while.
Yeah, but I think do you find it? Are you interested in kind of exploring other formats?
Yeah, definitely. And I think actually there's sort of the ability to like mix how you're using them, and to kind of complement your whatever your main. So you're making a feature. If you do a VR spin-off game or whatever that you can create. Well, what was that amazing Norwegian teen show? Do you know this? That was like they started putting it out on social media, but it's shot as a TV show. Yes, shot as a TV show, and then they would drop. It was all like in real time, so they would drop on if a scene in the show was happening at Friday night at 7 p.m. They would put it online at 7 p.m. on a Friday night. and then you'd kind of have to piece together the story by following all of the different characters' social media pages, and you'd look at their Instagram, and like it was a much more immersive way of looking at a TV show, or you could just watch the episode and do it.
Or how Black Mirror used the Bandersnatch episode, where you can at least interact or guide where the story's going and see the different possibilities.
Yeah.
So yeah, at least they're trying new ways. But I'm not saying it's going to die. So many stories still to tell.
Thanks. I think we had a question in front as well, so yeah, thank you.
Hi. This is a question for more like projects that you don't write. So if you're not a writer creator on it, do you seek out the projects and the people, or do they pitch to you? And if they pitch, what is it that you look for in that pitch?
I feel like it's quite similar to what Savannah said earlier. Like, it's quite painful making a short film. So I think already if someone's pitching something to you, okay, I think the way I kind of try to see it is, if someone else was to do this, would I be annoyed? Like, do I want this story to be mine, kind of? I think you kind of know if you want to be involved. If you've read the script and you're not interested, I think it's okay to walk away from it. Definitely go after things that 100% you feel like you can add value to. So maybe you're like, you can question the writer on something, but it's because you're also passionate about it. Because it's a painful experience, and you have to be all in. You can't be like half in. So I think stories that resonate to you, if it's not something that resonates to you, it's okay, it will resonate to someone else, and they'll just have a different filmmaking team, isn't it?
So do the writers get in contact with you?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
I think it's different with every project. If you have an idea that you want to get made, then you'd find a writer or use your network and approach a writer and tell them your idea, and then they'd go off and write it for you. Or someone could approach you because they know that you make short films or whatever with an idea, and then you can decide if you want to make it or not. So there's every film is different, or every documentary is different. There's no one way of going about it.
I think relationships with agents are really important as well. As you once you've got a few things under your belt, it's worth, because producers don't get representation unless you're working in commercials, because as the producer you're the person generating your own work, so there's no point in having someone trying to do that for you.
You don't wish you'd had
I wish we had it. I mean, I actually think one of the reasons that producers get such a shit deal on sorry, am I allowed to swear for the video? On a lot of films is that, if you're particularly in development, the writer and director will have set fees that their agent will not let anyone budge on, and the producer is always the person who doesn't have that. You're speaking directly to the financier. You don't have somebody saying, no, you need to get paid properly. You don't have that kind of backup. But knowing agents, and also I think once you start to establish a sort of company brand or like an ethos as a producer, then agents will know which of their clients you might like, and it becomes kind of easier for them to identify who to introduce you to. But yeah, like you say, it's completely different on each project, and if you have an idea, it's definitely not unnormal, is that word? It's not uncommon to go out and to then attach writers to something you've originated. Particularly in TV, actually, a lot of stuff is producer generated in terms of the initial idea. And writers will always pitch too. So
I'm going to take one last audience question before we finish. Was there hands up? I'll go for the one, I think, in the middle. You had your hand up the longest, so yeah. Just keep your hand up in the middle.
So I'm 16 and I'm in my last year of secondary school. Do you have any advice on kind of like building up experience at this age?
When I was 16, I was making short films in my spare time. And
what were you using to make films? What were you shooting on?
Either my crappy, I don't even remember what phone it was. It was like it had a camera, so that's all I cared about. And the BFI. I joined the BFI Film Academy when I was 15, and I'd done like a regional course, and I just kept going back to the BFI and making my own short films, and that really helps you when you're applying for jobs, or if you're applying to go to film school, or any creative, if you want to do a creative degree. The short films that you've made in your spare time really help. If you're approaching a film company, if you want to go into film, if you're approaching a film company, they always look for stuff that you've made in your spare time. So I definitely suggest making at least one short film, even if you're like the editor, the sound guy, the actor, the makeup. It shows that you've got initiative.
Yeah, we were saying earlier that producing is mainly common sense. Like, there's not really a guidebook as to how to do it, so you're always working it out on your own. And like you say, if you're making stuff and you're just showing you're enthusiastic and you've got initiative and you've kind of got a bit of hustle, then that's, I think, as good as doing any film degree or kind of more official training, just showing that you've got common sense.
And also, it's like when it just comes to creativity, it's not as if, because we were saying this before, it's almost as if, not to say film school or whatever isn't important, but I know plenty of filmmakers who are doing so well and they didn't even go to film school. They just literally have been making films. And so I think at your age as well, it's good because obviously you're able to, you've got phones, you can make stuff, but then at the same time there's a lot more competition because there are so many young people. Like, I've seen some stuff that young people are making, it's like, it's crazy, like how good it is. So I would say right now for you, just make as much stuff as you can. I wouldn't even say one film, I'd say just make as many films as you can, so that when you are approaching, even for work experience or internships, you're showing that you're genuinely passionate about it.
Also, I think just keeping really across what's going on in the industry. And if you sign up to the Screen International newsletter, they'll send you a little, every day you get, it's actually kind of constant in your inbox, announcements about films that are being made or about big changes in the sort of, if someone set up a new film fund, and actually just keeping across that, and you start to build up a picture of how everything works and what's going on. And I think that's always really impressive when you're interviewing people for jobs, if they've like put that effort into to kind of train themselves up. It's just very helpful.
I would just add that the BFI Academy is open to anyone aged 13 to 19 and it runs regionally across the UK. I think that's all the time we've got time for this panel, so if you'd like to join me in thanking our 4 producers. I need to grab you can't sit down just yet.